Welcome back to the vlog. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to be playing over at Capital Casino in the 1-3 game. We buy in for $500. And before we get going, I just want to say thank you very much for supporting the channel and for viewing the vlog. And I really do appreciate each and every one of you. So if you could please hit that like and subscribe button, that certainly helps the channel grow and it puts a smile on my face. Anyway, off we go into the action. Capital Casino. Well, we've been playing for about 15 minutes and we finally pick up a hand to play. We have two jacks and we're in the hijack. A player limps in front of us. Of course, we're going to put in a raise, make it $20. A player directly behind us in the cutoff calls. So does the small blind and the big blind. So it looks like we're going to have four people, and then the original limper also puts in the call. So with $103 in the center, we see a flop that comes ace, 8, 4, rainbow. Not the best flop in the world for two jacks. And when it's checked to me, I'm just going to check this one back. Turn card comes is a 4 diamonds, pairs the bottom card. Really shouldn't affect too much. It gets checked to me again. I'm just going to check it. Now the player behind me puts out a very small bet of $20. This is a pretty odd bet if you think about it. Now, if he had an ace, you would think he would bet that on the flop since everybody checked to him. If he had an 8, maybe he'll put out a small stab. For me, it seems like it is a bet that's just begging for action. So maybe he has some sort of 4? Not sure. Small blind puts in a quick call, and you know he has to have an ace in this position. I'm not going to take one off. I'm just going to get out of the way. Even though it's only $20, I might be able to catch a jack. It's not worth it. I'm up against a real hand and someone with at least an ace. We see a river card of a 7 of clubs. It's checked over to the player in the cutoff. He bets out for $40. Seems like he's just begging for a call. Player slides it in and he shows quads. So just remember, when someone gives you a really good price to draw at something, beware. A couple hands later, a player limps in for $3. I look down at 2 aces, raise it to $15 whole dollars, and everybody folds. All right, this next hand, a player raises to $15. I got king, queen offsuit. Sometimes I 3-bet this, sometimes I fold it, and other times I just call. Gets back to the player in the blind, and he has a very short stack. He goes all in for $22. And he gets 2 other players calling. Of course, I'm going to call for $7 more. There's going to be $92 in the pot. And I got a decent hand in position. Flop comes out, king, 9, deuce, rainbow. Pretty good flop for a king, queen. Well, the first player likes his hand. He decides to bet $25, which I think is rather small. Maybe he's just taking a little stab at it. Next player just calls 25. Maybe he's taking a stab. Maybe they're both betting a 9 and calling with a 9. Well, king queen's a pretty strong hand against those kind of bets, so I'm going to pump it up a little bit. I make it 75. Now, the reason I don't go bigger is because I don't think they have very much, and I kind of want them to call with a weak king or even the 9. And if they happen to be slow playing a hand like pocket deuces, it's not going to cost me that much. First player folds out, next one tanks for a while before finally putting in the call for the additional $50. So there's going to be $267 in the pot now. My opponent has less than $200 remaining in his stack. And as long as a blank comes, then I'm just going to go ahead and stick it in there. He does check when the 6 of hearts comes on the turn. Shouldn't really help a hand that has a 9 or a king in it unless they're playing some crazy hand with king 6 or 9-6. I jam, he snap folds, and we get a good river card of another king. So we turn it over and small blind just mucks his hand. Well, I really liked the table I was at, but unfortunately it was the force move game and my name was called, so I had to go over to the main game and did not get a great seat for filming, as you can tell. This first hand, I'm under the gun with ace jack suited, open for a raise to 15. It's folded back to the player in the big blind. He has about $350 to $400 left in his stack, and he puts in a raise to $50. Pretty strong bet on his part. Since I just got to the game, I'm not sure exactly how he's playing, so I'm going to make a loose call, and I do mean loose call with ace jack suited. And we see a flop that comes king jack 6. Nothing in my suit. He checked it over to me. It feels like he has either a super big hand or pocket queens. I checked it back, and of course we get a queen on the turn. Now he leads into me for $75. Of course, I'm just going to muck it, and he was slow playing pocket kings. If I had a little more knowledge on this player, I probably would have just folded pre-flop, but since he was basically new to me since I just sat down, I gave him a little bit too much action. Well, the very next hand, I am in the big blind, and there are a ton of limpers. I believe 6 limpers. I got ace king. I'm going to put in a raise, make it $40. Probably would just take down the money that's already in the pot. The player on my direct left, who just limped in to start this whole mess, decides to put in a call for the $40, which brings along the next player who also limped in, and he puts in the $40. I was worried about a complete chain reaction, but the other players do eventually fold. So looks like it's just going to be the 3 of us headed off to a flop. And the flop comes out 8-4 deuce rainbow. Not great for ace king. I decided to check to see if one of my opponents have some sort of pocket pair that they want to be firing with. Both of them decide to check. So I think that they don't have too much. Turn cards a deuce of clubs. I decided to bet $60 just to charge anyone with a flush draw. I don't have any flush card blockers. And if they don't have a pair, I doubt the deuce is going to help. First player puts in the call. I'm thinking that he probably has some sort of flush draw. And when the second player puts in the call, I'm a little concerned that he has some sort of pocket pair or an ace-high flush draw. Well, the river card comes as a 5 of hearts, makes my straight, but it's the dummy end of the straight, and I don't think I'll get any action from anything unless they are better than me. So I decided to check, and it gets checked to the last player who bets for $125. Now he could have some sort of ace-high flush draw. He could have some pocket pair and thinks maybe a set is good. And my big fear is he could have a hand like pocket sixes that has me beat. For $125, it's a close one. If you bet a little bit more, I probably would insta-fold. But for $125, I think I'm required to put in a call here, even though it's a crying call. The other player showed that he had the flush draw indeed, and my opponent chose pocket sixes. So I moved to the main table, and I played 2 hands. Well, you can say poorly, and I got exactly what I probably deserved, losing both hands. So hopefully we can turn it out with a little seat change to the end of the table. Well, I'm in the small blind, and there was a couple limpers and a player that raised to $10. I'm not going to let that stand. I make it $35 for my jacks, and it's folded back around to the player on the button who puts in a quick call. Flop comes out subpar. King, Queen, 9 with 2 clubs. I decided to go ahead and go c-bet my range here for $20. He puts in a quick call. Turn card comes is a 8 of spades. Doesn't really help me. Could check it here, but I don't think he's very strong. And I want to put pressure on a hand like 9-10, Queen-10, Queen-Jack perhaps. So I bet $60. Trying to represent a stronger hand than I have, and he folds. So we get one through. Now that was a pretty boring hand, but I showed it for a reason. I believe it has some sort of influence on this next hand. Where a player opens for $25, player to my right calls the 25, and I call 25 with pocket 9s. It's not quite good enough to re-raise early position raiser who opens for a large sizing. Flop comes king 8-3 with two spades. Not a great flop for pocket nines. Well, the early position raiser bets out for $23. Very weak bet. Player to my right calls rather quickly. I think he's more likely to have a flush draw or a weak king than anything else. So at pocket nines, I'm getting a cheap price. They both have a lot of chips in their stack. So I'm going to take one off here with a pair of nines, which might be the best hand at this time. Well, if it wasn't the best before, it's definitely going to be the best now when the turn is a nine of diamonds. Both players end up checking. I'm going to put in a rather large sizing of 125. I want to be charging my opponent if he has a flush draw, giving him the wrong price. First player folds rather quickly. He probably had a hand like ace queen or ace jack. Player to my right puts in a call for the 125. Leaves me about $220 behind, and when the seven of diamonds comes, it does bring in the backdoor flush draw, but I'm just going to go ahead and stick it in there. He puts in a very quick call. I show him the set. He said that was a nice hand, and he mucks. Well, a lot of the tougher players have left, and a lot of the recreational players are still here at the table. I do have ace-4 suited from under the gun. Normally this would be a raise or fold kind of situation, but with so many people playing so passively, I decided to see a cheap flop with ace-4 just to see if I can flush over flush somebody. Well, the flop doesn't come out that way, but it comes out 10-4-4, which is pretty good if you have a 4, right? Now with six-way action, I'm just going to check this to see if someone will take a stab at it with either a flush draw or a 10, or if I'm lucky enough, they might have another 4. A player does bet for $15 and it's folded to me. I'm going to put in a little raise right now. If he has a 4, I think he would probably repop it. If he has a flush draw or a 10, he would probably just call. Anyway, he just puts in the call, so I'm taking a 4 out of his range and leaving him on flush draws and a 10. And the 2 of hearts comes off. Not a great card. I decided to make a small bet. If he has a flush, I think he would raise quite frequently. And if he has a 10, he'll put it in the crying call. Well, he puts in the crying call, so I think he has a 10 and not a flush. The question is, how much would he call on the river? I'm thinking he wouldn't call a very big bet. So I bet $30, just trying to get a little extra value out of some sort of 10. And I'm like 90% sure he does not have a flush at this point. After some long and hard thought, he does decide to put in the call. And I show him my ace-4, and we take it down. Well, overall, it was a pretty quiet day, but sometimes quiet days are good. The next day, I was totally card dead for the first 50 minutes or so. I'm currently stuck about $100 from just blinding off and seeing a couple cheap flops. This hand took place where one player limped in, button raises to 15, small blind calls to 15, and I look down at 2 black aces. I raise to 60. Everyone folds to the small blind, who shoves all in. I said it was a bad time to make a move and call with my pocket aces. He wasn't making a move. He had a real hand. He had ace-king. Flop comes king high with an 8 and a deuce. Oh, another sweat. Turns a jack. River, 7 of hearts. We're safe. We win our first hand of the day and get back into the black. Next hand I play, I got king jack offsuit, and there was a limper, and I raised to $20. Folded back around to the limper. He's been starting to get very active and having a few glasses of wine in between. Flop comes ace jack 4 rainbow. Pretty good flop. He checks. I decided to check this one back for pot control. I figure I can only get 2 streets of value from this person. 10 of clubs rolls off on the turn, and he bets out for $20. I have a very strong hand. I still have a decent draw. I call for the 20. River card comes is a 7 of spades. Really a complete blank unless he had 9-8 of clubs. He thinks for a moment before sticking in $80. So a pot-sized bet on the river. I think he has a lot of bluffs in his range at this point. So I snap call. and he mucks his hand. Well, the same player from last hand has been very, very active, playing very aggressively, bluffing quite frequently, and I decided to limp in with King Jack suited from middle position. Normally this is definitely a raise, but since I know he's been playing extremely active and that he likes to attack weakness, I decided to feign a little weakness. Two other players limped in behind me. He raises to 20, and of course I'm going to call. There's $46 in the pot, and he leads out for $20 in the blind before the dealer puts up the flop. Flop comes Queen 10 8, 2 diamonds. I do have an open ender, a couple big cards. I'm not going anywhere. I put in the call. He bets again in the dark, this time for $60, and the turn is a ace of spades. So we make the nut straight. What to do now? Well, I think all of us can agree that folding is out of the question. So it's between raising and just flatting. If I just flat, he can probably bet again in the dark, maybe $100 or so. He might get there with some sort of flush draw if he happens to be having a flush draw. But if he has a really big hand, say maybe he has 2 pair or better, maybe he just has an ace, which he might think is good, then raising would probably be right because I'm shooting for all my chips getting in there. I started the hand with a little over $700 and he has me covered, and he is not shy about putting chips in. So I decided to go the more aggressive route and raise to $200. If he has a big hand, he's going to be sticking it in. If he doesn't, he's going to be folding, and he basically snap folds as I start to slide the chips in. Well, the action at the table was fantastic. I unfortunately was completely card dead, and after playing an additional hour, I did not have any kind of playable hands, and decided to cash out before I get a little frustrated and start loosening up my range too much. Well, for the week I ended up losing $145. These last 2 days that I'm showing you, I did end up winning. Now, the reason I have a loss for the week was because of one hand that happened earlier in the week, which I was not filming at the time, where I had a very, very strong hand, and the flop was a very draw-heavy board. Now, my opponent bet the flop. I put him on some sort of draw. I had a very, very strong hand at the time, and I just flatted. Turn card comes, completes the bottom end of the straight. He bets again. Of course, I think he still has a lot of hands that he missed in his range, and I called. And the river card comes, is basically a blank to all the draws, and he jams all in. And I'm just going, I can beat a lot of his value hands, and I can beat all his busted draws. And if he happened to make the bottom end of the straight, so be it. He would have to call a raise, entering with a very weak hand. I called it off, and he showed me the bottom end of the straight, and that was that. Anyway, thanks for watching. I really do appreciate each and every one of you for supporting the vlog. Hit that thumbs up button, share it with a friend. You know what to do. Until next week, good luck at the tables, and we'll see you back here soon.